Hi, this is Derek, and today what I'd like to do is share with you a cool little presentation that I discovered over the weekend. And this presentation is by Stanford University, and it's by the Persuasive Tech Lab. Okay, and if you, I'll have this presentation embedded below this video, but if you click this link, it'll take you to Stanford University, which is in California. You can verify the source of this particular presentation. But the reason why I found it was so interesting, and the reason why I want to share it with you today, is because it talks about something that I've been sharing with you over the last several months, and what I like to talk about, and that is behavior change. And this particular presentation talks about the top 10 mistakes in behavior change, and then it has this little subtitle, and some ways that you can fix them. So what I thought it would be cool to do is just essentially go through this presentation, and it has 10 slides, and during the process of going through the presentation that talks about behavior change and the top 10 mistakes for doing that, I'll just add a little bit of my commentary and my feedback about some of the things that they talk about, and so that you can get a feel for because the presentation itself doesn't have any audio that comes with it, so you don't get the original audio that came with it. If there was any, I'm not really sure. I just know that there are about 10 slides, and so I'm going to add the commentary myself so that you can get some benefit from this and some value from this video. Alright, so let's go ahead and get started. First of all, mistake number 1, relying on willpower for long-term change. Now, how many people do this? Okay, how many people go out and want to start something new? Maybe a typical project that people have is to lose weight. And so what do is they say, I am going to use my willpower and I am going to lose weight no matter what. I'm going to push through those temptations. I am going to get up at 4 o'clock in the morning every morning and exercise for 2 hours, and even though I just hate it, the idea of it, I'm going to use my willpower to do it. Right? I'm going to force myself to do this. But here's the problem, and that is that willpower does work, but it only works really well for short-term goals or short-term boosts of things that you want to do, not for long-term change. Okay, willpower might be able to help you to push through if you're running a race, to push through and complete the race if you're almost exhausted, or willpower might enable you to get up about 30 minutes earlier than you normally do in order to take care of something you have to do, and that's a one-time shot. And willpower is great for those one-time shots and boosts of energy and motivation that you need. But when it comes to long-term change, to rely on willpower is a huge mistake, and it's not going to enable you to actually see success when you go to try to change your behavior. You can't rely on willpower. Okay? In order to get long-term results and experience long-term change, you've got to change your thinking first. That's number 1. You've got to change what's going on in your head first, and then the motivation for changing will come almost naturally, so you won't even have to rely on willpower. Okay? So that's mistake number 1. Do not rely on willpower for long-term change. Number 2, let me advance the slide here. Attempting big leaps instead of baby steps. And here it has a little comment, seek tiny successes one after the other. And what I would say about this is there's a favorite saying that I have, and that is, small shifts create seismic differences. Okay? Think about the most massive structures that you see on the planet, and I think the largest one right now is called the Burj Dubai. It might have a different name right now, but it's the tallest skyscraper in the world. Now that thing was built one brick, one concrete slab, one rivet, one girder at a time. And the people that started out building this particular project, it took over 5 years to build this massive structure. The people that started building this knew that it was going to take one brick, one concrete slab, one girder at a time. If they had kind of looked at this and thought, okay, we want to see a new floor, I think it has over 100 stories, we want to see a new story on that building, a new floor every week, and if we don't, it's just not a worthwhile project. They would never have gotten anywhere. And how many people do you know that do this? Perhaps you're guilty of it. For example, let's say you want to write a book, and you're thinking, well, if I don't complete 2 to 3 chapters a week, then I might as well not even get started. Right? And so what happens? The book never gets done. What if instead of that, instead of trying to do these big leaps that are hard to believe, what if instead you focused on writing 1 page per day, or even 1 page per week? At the end of a year, you'd have 52 pages. And that's a lot better than no pages that you would have if you were trying to create so much content that your brain would get overwhelmed and just wouldn't do anything. So you've got to focus on small baby steps instead of big leaps. Big leaps will get you nowhere. Those massive buildings that you see, or any kind of massive project, are the result of not expecting big leaps, but doing and working on baby steps, one little result after another. Okay? So let's go on to the next slide. Number 3, the biggest mistake is ignoring how environment shapes behaviors. And what this means, at least in my mind, is that the things you read, the things you entertain yourself with, movies, games, whatever it may be, and the people you hang around with, your environment and what you feed your mind and your body, those things influence your behavior in both subtle and obvious ways, okay? So you have to be aware that all these things are influencing your behavior, your environment, your workspace, like I said, the things you mentally consume, the things you physically consume, and the people you hang around with. Those people influence, and those things influence your behavior. Sometimes in very strong ways, sometimes in very subtle ways. So you have to ask yourself the question, the things that I take in, am I choosing wisely? Or am I just kind of doing what everybody else does? And here's another trick. There's an old saying called that from Oscar Wilde, and he once said that everything popular is wrong. Okay, and I don't think that he necessarily meant absolutely everything. Obviously, food is pretty popular. I don't think he meant that that's wrong. But I think the point that he was trying to convey was, when you see that 90 to 95% of the people on the planet are unhappy and really get no results, you have to kind of look at what they're doing. Those 90 to 95% of the people, what's popular to that 90 to 95%? What do they like reading? What do they like viewing? What kind of movies do they like doing? How do they like to entertain themselves? What kind of people do they hang around with? What kind of things do they talk about? Pay attention to those 90 to 95% of the population and those things that they do, and avoid those things. Simple recipe for getting better results. Okay, what a majority of the things that a majority of the people are doing are the wrong things to do. Alright, so be aware of your environment, and if your environment is similar to everybody else's, what you're reading, what you're watching, the games you're playing, the people you're kind of talking to, and the things you talk about, if that's similar to what 90 to 95% of the other people are doing, chances are you're going to get the same results. So to change your behavior, if you ever want to change your behavior, think about changing the things that you're consuming, okay, in your environment. And if you do that, that'll be a big step in changing your behavior. Number 4, trying to stop old behaviors instead of creating new ones. So what you want to do is what it says right here. I love this. It says focus on action, not avoidance. So in other words, instead of perhaps, let's say you're trying to eat better, okay? Instead of trying to avoid eating junk food and thinking about avoiding eating junk food, I'm going to quit eating junk food, I got to stop eating junk food. Instead of doing that, which is the wrong thing to do, what you need to do is do everything you can to convince yourself as to why you should be eating healthy. And this is something I call the big why. Get out a piece of paper and write down all the reasons why it's going to be to your benefit to eat healthy. Okay, forget about avoiding the junk food and all those kind of things. Just simply think about what you want. Focus on moving forward, not pushing against something. Focus on the action that you want to accomplish and the behavior you want to achieve. And this will make it when you sit and think about a big why and a number of reasons why you want a certain behavior, why you want to implement that in your life. Like I said, eating healthy, and you write a whole list of whys. That's going to change your outlook or your perspective on that particular behavior, because now your brain has some legitimate reasons why it should take action. Okay? And by default, essentially what that's going to do is you're going to avoid this other stuff by default usually. Okay, so when you focus on the behavior that you want and not avoiding the behavior you don't want, you're going to get the results a lot quicker and a lot faster. And one of the things that this big why that I'm talking about helps you to do, and why it's so important, is because when you have a big why, it helps you to think about planning and preparation for achieving that behavior also. So if you make this list of a big why as to why you should eat healthy, you're going to start thinking about things that you can do to prepare for this behavior. What can you do at the grocery store? What can you pay attention to as far as ingredients and the things that you're putting in your body? You're going to start becoming more aware of the things that are going to help you to implement this behavior change by giving yourself a big enough why. Okay, so let's go ahead into number 5. Blaming failures on a lack of motivation. How many people do that? You know, how many people do you know that complain about never having the motivation to get things done? You know, it's just like, oh, I can't get it done. I'm just not motivated. I'm not a motivated person. That's not me. And yet, these same people seem to have no trouble whatsoever getting up early for vacation and going and running while they're on vacation, or keeping themselves busy on the weekends. You know, the problem isn't a lack of motivation, because these people are motivated to do things that are important to them. Alright, so the problem isn't that they're unmotivated people. It's just that they have a lack of priorities. They're not looking at the things that they want in life and making those things a priority. So it's not a problem with motivation. It's a problem of priorities. And the way that you make a behavior change a priority is some of the things that we talked about so far. But that big why that I talked about in the previous slide, that's going to take you. That's going to be a big step in order to give you the motivation to make a behavior change. Number 6. Underestimating the power of triggers. We are all creatures of habit. So, to change your life, doesn't it make sense that you need to change your habits and what you do in your daily routine? Okay? If you don't, you're going to continue to get the same results you've always gotten. So, to change your behaviors, you have to change your habits. You have to change your daily routine. And that is a big part of behavior change. There's no way around it. Look at what a musician does. Look at what a professional writer does, or a professional athlete. What do? They get into the habit of practicing things that are going to make them better at what they do. Whether that's shooting 1,000 free throws or practicing their instrument every day. These are habits that they've gotten into that are going to help them to have to get into a daily routine that's going to promote them to have a behavior change that's going to benefit their lives, right? So don't underestimate the power of triggers, or habits, as I like to call them too. So you need to change your habits in order to change how you do things in life and the results that you get. Mistake number 7 is believing that information leads to action. Now, this is one of my biggest pet peeves, because I see this so many times, and I try to share with people, both on my blog and these videos and in real life, to help them to understand that consuming information, you know, books, magazines, seminars, reading articles, all these things that have great ideas and great information. Consuming all this information has little to do with changing your behavior. Okay, because knowledge without action is worthless. And if all you do is constantly consume information, reading book after book after book, thinking that you're going to read a book eventually that's going to change who you are, and you're just reading more and more and more and just consuming constantly, thinking that's going to change your behavior, it's not. Consuming information without acting on it, that's what's going to change your behavior. If you don't do that, then you're wasting your time. Okay, so you've got to quit underlining stuff in books, you've got to quit getting more books, and start doing something with what you already have. Start implementing it and putting it into action. Because, like I said, if you don't, otherwise you're just wasting your time. Number 8, focusing on abstract goals more than concrete behaviors. Now, I've talked about this before when I've shared a productivity strategy that I call action statements. So you can see an example here. What most people do is when they want to do something, a behavior change, or they want to incorporate a new habit in their life, what do? They put something down that's pretty lame that says, get in shape. That's it. Or exercise. What does that mean? That means nothing. It's lacking action. It's lacking specifics. So the slide here has an example of a better way of putting it, and I totally agree. Walk 15 minutes today, or walk 15 minutes every day. Alright, that has an action, a verb, walk, and it has some specifics, 15 minutes today or every day. This is too abstract. Your brain's going to look at that and it has very little meaning to do anything of action related to it. This is an action statement. So you want to really focus on using action statements and your to-do lists and any kind of goals that you want to create, things like that. Use action statements. Number 9 is seeking to change a behavior forever and not for just a short time. Now to me this goes back to the benefits of focusing on small changes that was talked about on, I think, slide 2. Now when you try to change too much at one time, your brain often short circuits because you're throwing so much at it at once. You're trying to tell it, I want to change this, and your brain starts to short circuit. It's too much processing at one time. And as a result, it says, no, I'm not going to. And you end up giving up and going back to your old behaviors. So, once again, the important point to remember about this is to focus on small changes on an everyday, daily basis. That is what's going to make a difference. Give up the big stuff. Give up trying to change too much at one time. It will not work. Now, number 10. Biggest mistake is assuming that behavior change is difficult. Now notice the footnote, what it says here on the slide. It says behavior change is not so hard when you have the right process. So what you need to do is find a process that's designed to help you to change your behavior. Something that will make living a life of excellence a daily habit for you. And that's what's going to enable you to really experience some behavior change in your life and get better results, take better actions, make better decisions, and all these things that compound to give you what you have in your life, or what I call a life of excellence. In closing, I'll just say that this is exactly what the Day Launcher system is designed to do. This is a system that I've created that is what I call a daily success system. It helps you to implement a daily success routine in your life that is going to help you to avoid all of these mistakes. And if you want real change and you want to really experience a life of excellence, then check out the Day Launcher system. You can check it out by visiting www.daylaunchersystem.com. Once again, that's www.daylaunchersystem.com. That's all one word. Alright, so that's it for this video. I hope you found it useful and valuable, and thanks for watching. Did you like this video? Would you like 20 more just like it that explain to you how to take more action and finally get things done, all for free? well then visit www.theactionmachine.com. Once again, that's www.theactionmachine.com.